Welcome to the Healthy Aging Pod. I'm Kelly Yee. You can follow me on Instagram at Kelly Yee Yoga or subscribe to my YouTube channel at Avatar Yoga. In partnership with EPC Canada, we are excited to bring you our Healthy Aging webcast series. Our guest today is Neela White, a portfolio manager with more than 22 years of experience working in the financial industry. She advocates the open discussion and preparation of life-changing circumstances, both financially and emotionally, to be better equipped for potential long-term care costs. In addition to her financial experience, she holds degrees in psychology and gerontology and is an active speaker on the subject of caregiving and the sandwich generation. Welcome, Neela.
I think the other thing is obviously what we've been hearing in the news, surrounding COVID about long-term care homes, and the blatant disregard in some of them. I think it's also changed perception on where we're going to age. So if it's a sort of thing that you always thought, hey, you know what, when I get older, I'm going to go to a nursing home and I'm going to be taken care of there. I think that has changed, in which case, if it's now, no, I want to live and die at home, what do you need to put in your home to make this possible? So I think those are the two things that, time and basically being in our walls has certainly highlighted for us.
I love that you said that, this is kind of giving us sort of this different perspective at whatever age you are currently at, because
Mhm.
if you had originally planned to go to a care home, which let's say that's still your plan, and some of the facilities have done a great job. Unfortunately,
Absolutely.
sometimes in media we only see the negative stuff, but
Hmm.
there's definitely been care homes that have done an amazing job to take care of their patients. Now, the I know just from my research, more and more people are claiming that they'd love to stay home. We have this idea in our mind as to how we're going to age, and we're going to die peacefully in our bed, right? Like, sort of this idea. I love that you say this, because part of the reason why I'm doing all of this discussion and these webcast series is, if we want to do that and maintain the health at the highest peak, these are all the things that we kind of need to consider in order to maintain our independence for as long as we can. And that includes finances. And that
Absolutely.
includes this discussion that we're talking on, is discussing this with your family as to
Hmm.
what you want, how do you want to live out your days, and then what's going to happen if you do happen, unfortunately, to get illnesses, right? Like, some of that stuff cannot be so controlled.
Absolutely.
And so this is such a big, deep discussion, but so vital. One of the questions I have is related to obviously everything we had. Do you think it's important for adults now to have this discussion with their children on what they actually want, and how do they bring that up?
I think it is so important that parents have it with their adult children. And even if your parent is not comfortable bringing it up, I think you have to. And I think really it doesn't have to be a forceful, aggressive conversation at all, as opposed to, there are certain things that no matter what age you're at, that you're experiencing, that you can weave into the conversation. So, an easy starter. So in Ontario, we're in January. We've had a great winter so far with not a lot of snow, but who hasn't shoveled a driveway of wet snow, and you're totally fatigued after, your back might hurt, you might not bend your knees, so you end up wrenching your back. Simple conversations, mom, dad, how are you finding taking care of the house? Or if you are kids that end up going to your parents' house every weekend to cut the lawn, to change the light bulbs, to help them with their groceries. These are really simple ways that the conversation can come up about, hey, when you can't shovel the driveway anymore, are you going to look into a snow removal service? Okay. that's going to cost about this much. Should we set aside X amount for this? Because at some point, it may not be possible for your kids to come and help you when they have their own family. That's a lot of responsibility and something has to give. So I think bringing it up in just regular conversations, just, I heard a friend of a friend didn't have a will and passed away, and it was chaos. Mom and dad, do you have a will in place? Where is it if something happens? Power of attorney. Am I being considered to be a power of attorney? Oh, I am. Okay, let me think about this for a while. Especially because nowadays people are much more mobile. Let's say you're down in Ontario and you've written out this power of attorney. You never told your kids that they're power of attorney for care or finances, and they move to BC and they get a call. How does that work? So I think we need to find ways to be more open about our intent. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. I almost, because I've gone through this, I feel it's fair to say I think it's almost selfish when these conversations don't happen and people are blindsided by the sheer responsibility that they're going to have.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Definitely a great suggestion, and probably an easier segue for people to get there than just to have this really formal kind of sit down. Oh, we have to have a sit down, right? Because that's almost like too stressful. But it
Yeah.
can be a segue to have that a little more formal discussion. So, on to that, tips. So, you mentioned starting just sort of the conversation in a day-to-day life and
Yes.
recognize these things that may not, you're starting to notice that they're not able to live as independently as they did at one point in
Mhm.
time. um, what would you say is essentially like a call to action plan for us, that if we want to have this discussion and have a plan in place? What would you say is in sort of a more immediate?
I would say so. Obviously, I work in the financial industry, so I might have a little bit of bent on what I say is the first couple things. I would say it's vitally important for parents, for anyone. Let's not say parents, but anyone, to have a power of attorney for care and a power of attorney for property. You don't know; it doesn't have to be age related. It could be anything that happens, and you want to make sure that there is somebody out there that's advocating for you, that knows what your wishes are and that can follow your wishes. So I think powers of attorney are super essentially important. I think having a will in place is extremely important. Half of Canadians don't have a will. I think especially if you have children, I think it's your big responsibility to put that in place. It is part of their well-being. So I would say that would be number 2. I would say number 3, you should have a discussion at least with your spouse and with your immediate family. And it doesn't have to be all at once. It can be a gradual conversation where every time you meet, you discuss one thing, shoveling the driveway, mowing the lawn. What happens if I can no longer take care of the house? What am I willing to consider? So a gradual conversation, but have it before it's too late and the crisis begins. Um, I'd say one of the things that is interesting now, because we're all spending so much time in our homes and stuff like that, I think we can start taking a better look at the community that we're living in and the house that we're living in and say, okay, you know, is where I'm at right now supportive of me aging independently, with dignity, safely? And if it's not, I think it's time to say, okay, if these criterion aren't met, I need to look for somewhere else where all of these things can happen. Or if not all of them can happen, it can happen with minimal amount of assistance. So I think now's a good time because we're all indoors. We certainly have our four walls. Um, so I'd say that would be another one. And I think, this probably sounds really, really simple, but I think be realistic. I think we all probably have a bit of um, whimsy in us, but I think there are certain things that you do need to be realistic about. And I think it's helpful for everyone when you can be. It allows for an open conversation, a truthful conversation, and an emotional conversation. And I think bottom line is we have to recognize there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it could be a tearful conversation, which is fine.
Mhm. Absolutely. I love how you say, not just independent, but with dignity and safety, because I think we probably all have examples. I mean, you and I we definitely have examples of doing the research in aging, and you were
Mhm,
direct working with, aging adults, that, that's what we want. We kind of want to live our life as, dignified as
mhm,
possible. And then, when we leave this life, that there's still some dignity and independence, or as much as we can have of it. And of course, being safe. I mean, that's
mhm,
probably ultimate, especially if you have family. I mean, your family wants you to be as safe as possible. One of the things I do also want to make mention is, I know sometimes people might feel it feels daunting, right? Like, the tips
mhm,
that you gave are great. Preparing your will. I love the fact that you're talking about the power of attorney, both from a healthcare perspective and like an estate or a financial perspective. Because the healthcare one, I think a lot of people forget, is that sort of
yes,
pushed to the side. And but there are resources available, right? Like, there's people like yourself that can kind of, help
absolutely.
talk that through. And then there's our resources. So, um, there's just has to be a little bit of research. And I don't know if you have information. If someone were to be able to connect with you, is this a discussion? I don't want to. I just want to ask if this is a discussion that you are willing to have with them on this starting point, because.
Obviously, the 10 years that I had of caregiving, it was emotional, and I think emotional tasks stick with you, and you become passionate about it because you do not want people to go through what you went, because obviously you've learned from the experience. I'd be more than happy to talk to anyone. I think it's important to start thinking, and again, I can't stress enough that it doesn't have to be this, it doesn't have to be this forceful downer of a conversation, as opposed to, it'd be great to be proactive and positive as opposed to making it a reactive undertaking. And that just starts with a few simple questions, a few simple thoughts. I think what everybody needs to do is take a step back as well and realize things like, you know, do you put more time in planning a vacation than you do in planning how you're going to age? Do you put more time in buying a new car and researching that than researching places to live, how you're going to age, what you want? So I think, there is, so people may say, well, I don't have the time for that right now. Mm, I think we can all make time because it is our life, right?